The Industrial Revolution sparked innovation, but it also unleashed a storm of inequality and worker suffering. An idea emerged. Could a utopian society of equality and shared wealth replace this fractured world? The problems of industrialization provoked a range of ideological, governmental, and collective responses. As a direct result of the work and living conditions created by the Industrial Revolution, socialists began to call for a more fair distribution of society's resources and wealth. During the mid to late 19th century, socialism evolved from a utopian to a Marxist scientific critique of capitalism.
Despite the positives that the Industrial Revolution brought, like more employment opportunities and economic growth, the socialists attempted to address the problems that are brought about in society. They criticized the emerging Industrial Revolution for dividing society into two classes, the middle class and the working class. They felt that the liberties that were being promoted by liberals only benefited the factory owners and businesses, which were classified as the middle class, and not the workers, the working class. This ended up creating uneven wage distribution as well as general inequality in the workplace.
The socialists' main aim was to restore harmony and cooperation through social organization. They also sought to reorganize society completely rather than reforming it piece by piece through political measures. They visualized a society in which workers would share a harmonious, cooperative, and prosperous life. Utopian socialism supported a self-sufficient society. They wanted for people of all classes to collaborate and create a society that didn't have to depend on a government in order to survive. This would include people growing their own food, creating their own clothes, building their own houses, and more. Everyone would share their wealth, and there wouldn't be anything that was owned by one person or group. It would be collectively owned by everyone in the community. They believed that shared wealth would bring fighting to an end.
Marxism was created by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Their ideas insisted that all history is shaped by class struggle and that in future revolutions the working class would overthrow the bourgeoisie or middle class and replace capitalism and private property with a communist state in which all property is collectively owned. Although Marxism and utopian socialism are not the same, they have many similarities. Some of these include the response to the Industrial Revolution, the ideas of collective good, and shared ownership. The key difference between utopian socialism and Marxism is that utopian socialism envisions an ideal society through moral persuasion and peaceful change, often with unrealistic plans, while Marxism predicts a class struggle leading to a revolutionary overthrow of capitalism to achieve a classless society based on a scientific analysis of history and economic forces, viewing social change as inevitable rather than idealistic. Both Marxism and socialism emerged in the 19th century as a reaction to the Industrial Revolution and the perceived excess of capitalism. Both Marxism and socialism emerged in the 19th century as a reaction to the Industrial Revolution and the perceived excess of capitalism. Both envision a society where the means of production are collectively owned and controlled by the people, either through communal living arrangements or through a worker-controlled state.
There were many impacts that came from utopian socialism, like working-class organizations being promoted, but the main changes that occurred were because of people like Robert Owen and Claude Henry de Saint-Simon. Robert Owen was a successful Welsh-born manufacturer who founded British socialism. He hoped that economic planning and working-class organization would solve the problems caused by the Industrial Revolution, as well as the threat of increasingly mechanical, unfeeling social relations. During his time, he bought a cotton mill in New Lanark, Scotland, and set up a model factory town. His workers only worked 10 hours a day, and children between the ages of 5 and 10 had to go to school rather than go to work. Robert Owen then moved to the United States, where he founded a community that he named New Harmony in Indiana. His experiment ended up collapsing, but it brought changes including creating a movement for producer cooperatives, which is a business that is owned by people who create the same goods, and he created a national trade union. Claude Henry de Saint-Simon, who was a French philosopher as well as a social reformer, was Robert Owen's counterpart. Before his contribution in socialism, he was a noble who had served as an officer in the War of American Independence. He also ended up losing a fortune after he speculated in national property during the French Revolution. Saint Simon shared Owen's concern of the effects that came from the Industrial Revolution on social relations, which is why they had been each other's counterparts. He had actually been the one to coin the terms industrialism and industrialist to define the new economic order and its chief animators. Saint Simon believed that work was the central element in a new society, and it should not be controlled by politicians, but by scientists, engineers, artists, and industrialists, which had ended up being a base principle of utopian socialism.
The problems of industrialization provoked a range of ideological, governmental, and collective responses. During the Industrial Revolution, utopian socialism was an impactful part of a search for a fair distribution of society's resources and wealth. Eventually, utopian socialism shifted to a more Marxist view of capitalism. The Industrial Revolution, despite bringing economic growth, also exposed social inequalities and worker exploitation, sparking the rise of socialist ideologies. Both utopian socialism and Marxism aimed for a collective ownership and a fairer distribution of resources, with utopian socialism focusing on harmonious, self-sufficient communities. Figures like Robert Owen and Claude Henry de Saint-Simon played key roles in shaping socialist thought. These responses to industrialization laid the foundation for future social movements and reforms on economic justice and equity.